Hi, I'm Alun Wyn Jones, Wales and British Lion. I've been using hyperbaric therapy and Henshaw hyperbarics for circa 3 to 4 years now. I've been very fortunate enough to have the Henshaw Deep at home.
Talk back through how you first came across hyperbaric therapy and started using a hyperbaric oxygen chamber.
Obviously, I was aware of hyperbarics, how you could use it for recovery. I think in my earliest memory would be seeing NFL, NBA, American sports players essentially using it at home and thinking, wow, they've got these facilities at home or this apparatus. And lo and behold, 10, 12, 15 years on, I find myself using something similar. It's probably the technology, I should imagine, has come on a little bit. And I was fortunate enough to use Hyperbaric Centre in Swansea. And that was my first probably experience. And then roll on a few years, got on the phone to Henshaw and Jeff in particular, who were able to send someone down, bring me I think it was the Hyperbaric Deep, and put it in the house. And I think logistically, with the family and having it essentially in the front room, I was able to use it twice a day and was able to come back and feature then first game and the rest of the Six Nations, which we actually got the championship then in 2021. But then fast forward to here, and we're talking about my experiences, and obviously particularly in 2021 with the Lions, where I came back from the tour. The guys again sent one down pretty much overnight. I was able to set it up myself, albeit probably not as good as the pros, but set it up, and I was using that steadily twice a day for a recovery period, which was just under 3 weeks, I think it was, twice a day, with a very understanding wife and family.
So you've been using HBOT in one form or another for 3 or 4 years, would that be right?
Probably thereabouts, intermittently. Obviously that early opportunity I had, or a necessity through the charitable run facility in Swansea. But yeah, I've had a well-rounded experience, I'd like to think. I've been very fortunate the guys have left me with it. So obviously I think the frequency of my actual use has probably gone down a little bit, but I'm very keen to use it minimum once a week. I try to get 2 in, but I do feel refreshed when I come out, and that's why it's been part and parcel really when I've had when I needed of my recovery, with other things like hot and cold, mobility, and the obvious stuff of the common sense stuff of nutrition, sleep, and all the obvious ones.
So you're using HBOT hyperbaric therapy with the hot and cold and a few other things as well, or is that just want to talk through sort of your
That's funny,
general regime?
I learned a long time ago there's a difference between habits and lifestyle. Habits are something that some people can, they haven't got, or they have to train, or they have to manufacture. Once you've got them, then it's easy to keep them. But whereas I think people can say, well, a lifestyle is exactly the same thing. Well, no, a lifestyle it's like getting up and having breakfast. It's getting up and putting your clothes on in the morning. I think I've been conscious in that with my career and recovery in particular, that you need to almost recover harder than you train, because people always say, how hard do you train? And my response to that, well, it depends on how hard I recover. So I do the hot and cold of, I've got a jacuzzi sauna, cold bath I had to invest in, not only for my career, but through COVID as well. And obviously the addition to that has been HBOT, and they're all part and parcel of a well-rounded recovery regime for myself.
So it sounds like during the times when you've really needed it, you've accelerated the HBOT, you've done a lot more sessions, and then just generally you sort of back off to a couple of times a week when things are going well?
Yeah, very, very, very much so. I think it's funny, having, like I mentioned, all the apparatus, it comes down to one thing, then they're not making more of it, that's time. So then you have to prioritize. I think at the acute time where I feel I need it most, I'll probably lean towards HBOT. But then obviously as you become more active, you need the cold, the hot, the mobility stuff. And then, one can be the accessory to another. But again, having the options of all is the biggest thing for me.
And how do you find using the chamber? I mean, the time you spend in it, the actual experience, how would you describe it? I
think I've got better. Initially, I'm 6'6", I've got a Henshaw Deep, and initially I was a bit claustrophobic. I know it sounds stupid, I didn't feel like I could regulate my own temperature, deciding what to wear. I'm a bit, got a bit more of a routine. I open a window, let fresh air come in, make shorts and a tee on, set up, make sure the iPad's charged and the AirPods are charged. But now I've got that sort of routine down, and not that initial trepidation or claustrophobia is gone. It's actually, I like the feeling of the cocoon nature of it now. I know it sounds stupid, but I like going in there and feeling, lock it up, away from the world and zone out, sleep, or like I say, watch an iPad or whatever, and have a bit of time away when you're recovering at the same time.
I think Johnny May said it was like a bit of me time or something like that. Yeah. Sounds like it's similar with you.
Yeah, definitely.
And in terms of setting up the chamber and getting support from the team at Henshaw, how would you just talk us through what's happened and what they did and what they do for you?
It's funny. I think the first time someone brought it down, I think they set it up in half an hour, 40 minutes, so not too long at all. I did pop my head in a few times, see what was going on, and it looks far more complicated than it is. I think my wife did have to help me set it up because being quite tall and not the smallest, to get insight to actually build it when you do it, that's a bit of a challenge, but anyone can do it as long as you've got the time. And I did have to call the guys at one point just to check up on the tubing, make sure everything was right and correct, and like I say, phone call, 10 minutes and I was done. Probably most people would have a bit more common sense than myself and probably wouldn't need to make that call, but like I say, whether they come down and install it or install it myself, someone was at the end of the phone and it was done within half hour, 40 minutes. Initially, my first experience was in Swansea in the charitable facility that had the HBOT. It was WRU sorted it out. I went down there, used it, and I did everything I needed. I was aware that other people had been using it, and there was home installations that you could get now. I was like, right, I'll make a call, and like I say, I think it was within a week at that point, where I had one down, and somebody came down, installed it, and it was away I went. I was very fortunate that I had a proactive S&C team that were all about recovery, and had the connections, and knew where to source what we needed. And again, the accessibility of having it, not just in Swansea now, but in the house, meant that I could use it again. Ultimate frequency for me would be twice a day, and it just made things easier then. Because I probably didn't stress it enough. I think the time you save, going places, I think it would have been 25 minutes, 50 minutes is a lot of time, whether you're, you've got a family, you run a business, or whether you're a sportsman. 50 minutes is 50 minutes that you can't necessarily afford on the road. And to have it in the front room, like I said, made a massive difference with regards to essentially use of time, which is the most precious thing that you have, whether you're a businessman, a sportsman, whatever.
Yeah, looking forward, as your career progresses and you go through the various phases, how do you see hyperbaric therapy working in the future?
I think it's going to be a staple part of recovery. I think it's going to become a norm, such as hot and cold and sauna therapy, whatever. There's lots of other stuff. There's red light. I think it's been integral for some of my recovery and general recovery that I've experienced. But I do think it'll become, if not because players want it, it'll become more mainstream for a lot of people. And particularly I think that health and wellness and general well-being, like we alluded to earlier, depending whether you're a businessman, you're into a triathlon, or you like to do the odd Ironman or whatever, or again, you're building up for a marathon. I think there's an opportunity there. I don't see why people wouldn't invest themselves. To take part in a triathlon, particularly an Ironman, can be quite expensive. So I don't know why you wouldn't invest in yourself to make sure that you can, do the training to actually complete the race or complete the competition that you're entering yourself into. It's something I've always said, if you don't invest in yourself, no one else will. And that's something I've always thought about.
When you talk about recovery, there's two types of recovery. There's the recovery from the day-to-day wear and tear of training and playing, and then there might be recoveries of something specific that happens. How do you feel about that and how you use hyperbaric therapy for those situations?
Initially, I did find in that acute phase after an operation, which, as you say, could be one kind of recovery from a specific event where surgeons had to take action. I definitely found those early days, those first 14 days, it made a difference. And then, it's funny, when you use something regularly, it's hard to actually quantify how much your recovery you're having, but having hot and cold and not having HBOT, I can definitely feel the difference when I'm using it for general recovery away from surgical intervention or anything like that. And I think you can't underestimate, we spoke earlier about time of getting away, you can't underestimate the psychological benefits of actually zipping yourself up and getting away from the outside world, as it were. I know it sounds a bit stupid. Unless you tried it, you understand. Turn the phone off, leave the iPad outside, and just sleep or try and zone out, or even I know there's a lot of people that do a lot of meditation stuff, and you can do that in there, or whatever you feel works for you. But I think there's definitely scope to be able to split the two between the surgical intervention and the recovery from an operation and the general recovery in day to day. But like I say, you've got to be in touch with your body and what you how hard you train, what you do, to be able to be aware, because sometimes it's very easy to do things for the sake of it and not actually realize the benefits. And I'd like to think that I realize the benefits, particularly having those options of hot, cold, and the general well-being and recovery of using HBOT as an accessory to other things, or other things as an accessory to hyperbaric.
It's interesting what you said earlier about you do the hot and cold, but if you don't do the HBOT as well, you notice the difference?
It's a personal feeling, reflection. Obviously, we do the hot and cold. You do to get the flush through the system. I think if I do a cold and I go straight into the HBOT, because my body temperature's down, I always find a little bit warm in there. So it's almost like I don't just get the pressure, I get the heat as well. Even though I'm not moving or doing any exercise to get my blood flow going, to go back in there, because I know it's going to be hot for myself. It's just because I got a high body temp anyway. I feel that going in there after doing cold bath in particular, I feel it prolongs the benefits. But that's a personal feeling. There's nothing scientific behind it. It's just the way I like to do it. I'm hugely grateful to Henshaw Hyperbaric for the support, in supporting my Henshaw Deep and giving me the ability to have hyperbaric treatment at home as an accessory and an add-on to my already in situ recovery regime, not only for my sport performance but my health and well-being, and I hopefully use it in the future. I've been very fortunate in my experience with Henshaw. I know people say, well, you would be, you're from professional sport, but I think the willingness to help, in the initial time period that they got it to me, in fairness, I think they were thin on the ground, because a lot of people have been using units at the time. They got it to me within a week, and the guy who came down to the installation was very helpful, very friendly, and particularly the second time when I had to make the phone call when I was doing the installation myself. It was a very affable phone call. Little did I know it was a case of essentially flicking a switch and away I went. And it's funny, I think, when you look at treatments or practices that may be away from the mainstream or not. It's not like you go to a health club and there's hot and cold, there's a sauna and a hot tub or a cold tub or whatever. Doing this, that it can, whether it be altitude or hyperbaric, obviously in this case, there's no intimidation. It's just another service, another opportunity to, aid yourself and aid your recovery in your well-being journey. My setup experience was a bit more long-winded than it needed to be, but very fortunate that Henshaw's based in the UK. I could pick up the phone. There's a website as well, obviously, but the ability to pick up the phone and have a voice at the end of it that can clearly put me through the process of putting it together and ultimately fixing it if anything went too seriously wrong, was a big peace of mind.